Welcome back to the Road to Great Health podcast, where we discuss natural solutions to today's worst health problems. I'm Dr. Kevin Lenderman from Dr. Kevin's Wellness Clinic in South Louisiana, and I'm joined by Dr. Rob DeMartino from Superior Health Solutions in Las Vegas, Nevada, my mentor. Doc, what's up today?
Doing great. Nice and sunny day out here.
Yeah, I'm sure in Vegas it is. Yeah. We're going to be coming down there, I think, in a few weeks to come see you.
Yes, a couple weeks.
Yeah. So for those of you that don't know, my practice travels to Las Vegas to study under Dr. Rob's program at least 4 times a year. He's the one that created all of the technologies and science behind how we're able to get so many sick people well here using his methods. And if you've been catching our previous podcasts, we have been going over the 5, what Dr. Rob calls Archimedes levers. And so these are 5 very big leverage points that almost all patients miss in their road to achieving great health. And so imagine you're on a road and health is your destination. You have 5 roadblocks that you have to get through, or you're not going to reach that destination very easily. And that's what these 5 big leverage points are. You know, everybody's so worried about, should I go carnivore or keto, or how much water should I drink, or what supplement should I take? And these 5 levers will stop you from getting there, and they're critically important, and almost no one is addressing them. So we did vitamin D, and you have to earn it.
Yep.
We did leptin, and trying to make you sensitive to leptin.
Right.
We did melatonin to help your brain and help you sleep. And melatonin is super important, and it doesn't come from CVS. And today, almost no one has heard of the hormone that we're going to talk about today. Right, Doc?
Yeah. MSH, one of my personal favorites, but yeah.
MSH.
I think we talked about it last time too, but I think it's important. You know, so many times when we sit with people, they have this belief structure of, I can't get better. I've tried everything. I've done everything. And then I'll ask them about these Archimedes levers and these things. Okay. And, you know, I'm always like, look, this is a loaded question. You may not know the answer to this. So I'm like, but you ever had, what are your levers for this? They're like, I don't even know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
And I'm like, and that's why you get stuck in this belief that you can't get better, because these things will override so many of the other big problems that if you can move these 5 things and you kind of forget about some of the other stuff to a certain extent, you'll get away with it. But it's just because no one's looking at it, because you can't supplement your way out of it. You can't pharmaceutical your way out of it. These are things that no one has told you that you need to do. But it's why people get stuck in that belief of, I've tried everything and nothing is going to work for me.
Yeah, you know, if you take care of these 5 levers, you really don't have to do as much with all those little things like putting out little fires, because you've done the groundwork. You've handled these 5 really important things that are critical to you achieving great health. And so I hope the audience is getting a lot out of this. And so, Doc, let's get into MSH.
Yeah. All right. So MSH stands for melanocyte stimulating hormone, right? So most people hopefully are aware that when you get color on your skin, or the darker your skin is, you have more melanin. Right. So melanin is the stuff that creates the pigment in your skin. So most people stop with MSH as they say, okay, well, MSH is melanocyte stimulating hormone. So it is the hormone that is stimulated by, of course, sunlight to cause your body to actually make melanin. Right. So it stimulates your body to be able to get a tan. And most doctors kind of stop there. They're like, you'll tan. Right. And that's it. But they don't realize that we can use this marker as a proxy for, again, kind of the same way we do for vitamin D. How much certain sunlight are you getting? And is your body then able to translate that into fantastic health, right? Because ultimately, we're very complicated houseplants where we take light and we convert it into energy. Right.
Yeah.
You know, plants do that through photosynthesis. We have a little bit of an opposite process that we do. You know, they make oxygen. We use oxygen to make carbon dioxide. They use carbon dioxide to make oxygen. We have a nice relationship together because we feed each other. Right. They make the oxygen. We make the carbon dioxide. But when we look at MSH, and all of the things that MSH is related to in your body. And it's actually so many things that I even made a list. Like normally I don't make lists. Like I know this stuff like the back of my hand, but there's so many things and so many of them are so important. I didn't want to accidentally skip one as I was going over them off the top of my head. It is a really profound thing when these numbers are good. And MSH is one of those markers on lab work that sometimes, and you probably had the experience before dealing with patients. Patients will come in, they'll be like, I feel terrible, but my lab work looks great.
Right.
The doctor said everything looks good. Or I feel great, and their lab work looks like they shouldn't feel great, right? MSH is one of those markers on labs that you cannot fake,
Yeah.
right? If it looks good, the person feels good. If it looks bad, they feel bad. And depending upon where it is on that spectrum is how bad that they feel. It's the one marker that it's not going to look bad on lab work and the person's like, I feel amazing. I have a ton of vibrant energy. I feel awesome. I sleep great. That doesn't happen. I sat with one patient and she was a mold patient, and we have a whole other podcast on mold. But when we finally got finished working, we're working through with her, and I sat down and she's like, I got to tell you, I feel great. And I said, I got to tell you, I already knew that. And she's like, why? And I was like, and I flipped up her labs. I was like, look at this MSH level. I was like, look at where it was. Like originally when we run, I know we talked about this before. When we run MSH levels on people on labs, it typically comes out that it's so low, it's unreadable.
Yeah.
The average person who deals with especially kind of chronic problems, but even in general, it'll come out that it'll say it's less than 8, which means it's so low the lab can't even read it. Mm-hmm. When she got to 30, she was flying high.
Yeah.
Right. And I was like, I knew what this conversation was going to go like before we even got into the room together. I mean, I know it looks good because that number looks good. And the vast majority of people we tested for, it shows up unreadable. And it's just kind of across the board.
Yeah. I tested mine about 6 months ago, and it wasn't great. It wasn't terrible, but it wasn't great. Even as many things as I try to do to keep myself healthy. And I've been working on bringing mine up, and I'm ready to retest it because I think it's going to be a lot higher because I've been feeling a lot better, a lot more energy, and, just a lot more healthy. And I bet my MSH is going to be a lot better, but I had never even tested my own MSH before. I looked at all my other labs. And so it was really cool. Like, hey, let me go ahead and test my MSH. And so I'm like, yeah, that's an area I can work on. It's a big deal.
It's an actionable step. It's something that you can measure. Sometimes things like, how much light should I get? Obviously questions we get all the time about it this morning. It's like, well, how much light should I get? How much exposure, how much time should I be out there? It's one of those markers that's a good slip and check to tell you, like, are you getting enough? Right? Because I tell my patients, look, we want to get, you want to get color on your skin, right? We want to get change. We don't want to burn, but we are looking to get color on your skin. Responsible color change is what I call it. Yeah. Getting in that sun to get your skin color to change. And if your skin color is changing, there's a good chance that your MSH is going up because your body's going to have to use that hormone to make more melanin in your system.
Yeah. That's a good marker for us too, because we're like, are you getting your sun? And they go, yeah. And they're still white as this paper right here. You're not quite getting enough. Let's pay a little more attention to that. Right.
And I understand. I mean, that fear of the sun has been so like heavily instilled in people.
Oh yeah.
Right. It's so heavily instilled in people too. And of course, the darker your skin is naturally, the more sunlight you need.
Right.
Right. So that's always the other, complex portion of this as well, too. Sometimes when people are like, I'm really fair, I don't do well in the sun. And I'm like, well, the good news is you don't really need a lot.
Yeah.
Right. The darker your skin gets, the more that you need. And that's why, a lot of the times we'll see this. There's an interesting, not to get aside, but there's an interesting thing where there's a large amount of Somalian population that has moved to Detroit, which is not a very sunny place. Right. Been there once. It was not very sunny. It's gray and overcast. And that population has like one of the highest rates of autism in the world for their children because they're just not conditioned to that kind of low level of sunlight. That level of darkness of skin is going to require a lot heavier sunlight. And we have evolved that way too. One of my friends is a good doctor friend of mine is in Ireland. And he's super fair, like translucently fair, but he has to be because in Ireland, there's just not a lot of UV light. So he couldn't be very dark skinned. He would never survive there. He wouldn't be able to absorb enough light. So you evolve over the course of time. His whole family's from there, has been there for generations to have this lighter skin to be able to pull more light in. But again, somebody with that skin type doesn't mean that they can't build melanin over the course of time, right? You have to do it slow and steady wins the race, but you need to be able to build that. And people who tell me all the time, oh, doc, I'm kind of intolerant to light. Like I'm tolerant to sun, like I don't do real well with it, guarantee you their MSH is not readable because that's how you know that that's what's happening.
Yeah. one of the things I've heard you say that I always thought was so funny, we take somebody with genetics from South Africa or South America, they move to Alaska to work, and we ship them a banana in December. Like, that is completely energetically backwards in every way possible. Bananas don't grow in Alaska in December. They don't grow in Alaska at all. And their genetics aren't really even designed to be in Alaska. But, with aircraft and people being able to move around and with jobs, we've got genetics spread in places that they weren't originally supposed to be or developed as. And so it causes more problems than people think.
Oh, a lot more problems. It is a huge fundamental thing. And, when you get into genetic typing with this, it can get really, really specific. Like, my genetic typing is I am built to run in the heat with very little food. That's basically what my genetic type does. But my genetic type is very inflexible, right? So, like, I'm built for heat. I am not built for cold. I don't do well in cold. And funny because I grew up in New York, right? So we had cold winters and snowstorms and all that sort of stuff. And my friends used to laugh because they're like, "Oh, you're all skin and bones. That's why you don't like the cold." Genetically, my body doesn't do well in cold. Now, my wife is kind of the polar opposite. My wife is built for living in high altitude, right? With not as much sun. She was pretty fair. She's gotten darker now because she does a lot of sun, but also eating high levels of fat, right? Because her family, that's where her family lineage, her maternal family lineage evolved from. But her metabolic types are much more flexible, where she'll do great in cold and she'll do great in heat, where I'm not. Like, I got heat and that's it. It's kind of bust for me. So she has the flexibility and you grew up, again, very fair, very kind of afraid of the sun. Now goes into the sun, gets a nice base tan, and everyone always makes the comment like, "Wow, you used to be so fair." But her health has changed so much dramatically for the better. But she has that flexible type where she can do that.
Yeah. I mean, the sun is just so important, and it's just so unfortunate that we've been taught to fear the sun so much. I mean, you have to respect it. And we're not talking about going to Destin, Florida twice a year and frying yourself. We're talking about daily UV light exposure, and we can measure that by MSH levels. And that's what, we want to talk about today is the MSH actually measures, are you making energy from the sun or not?
Right. It stimulates, so specific sunlight stimulates this very specific gene in humans that's on chromosome number 2. It's called POMC, POMC. And POMC stimulates a bunch of different hormones in your system. For today's format, we'll obviously just kind of focus on MSH is one of the big ones. But the stimulation of POMC is a huge deal for the human body. Basically, when you can stimulate POMC and we can measure MSH as a proxy for that, again, how well we're doing with that, think of it in a simplistic way, like the more electrical energy your body can make, right? So the more electricity that we can make, the faster we heal, the faster our bones regenerate, the faster our red blood cells work better and regenerate, the faster our body heals, the higher systems that we can run, and again, the regeneration rate. So something like osteoporosis plays a major role with this. They always talk about vitamin D as an important thing for osteoporosis, but MSH and that stimulation of POMC is a major component of that. So when we're looking at this, again, I know now, I think I always talk about there's no supplements for this, but I believe that they actually now created a peptide for this. But again, the peptide does not stimulate your production of POMC and all of these other hormones. It's not going to raise that electrical level. So they're going to take what happens naturally and say, yeah, but if you take this thing, you'll get these levels to go up. But you're not going to get all the results. It's the same thing with vitamin D. It's the same thing with melatonin. You're not going to get all the results unless you earn it at yourself from those perspectives. And just to go through the list, right? And I'll go through slow and then we'll kind of pick apart some of these because they're interesting. But this is all the things that happens when MSH levels are good, right? MSH plays a major role in immune system tolerance. And what I mean by that is if you have an autoimmune disease, you better know what this number is.
Yeah.
Right? Because your ability for your immune system to turn on and then turn itself back off is very much based on what your MSH levels are and what that POMC gene is doing. It helps libido, right? It helps libido. And it is not life-threatening as some of the other stuff that we deal with. You have a person who has low libido and they're married and they have a spouse, it's affecting their life,
right?
In a negative way, right?
And their spouse's life,
and their spouse's life, right? And it's just stress. We talked about stress. We'll probably have a conversation about stress. It decreases appetite. It increases the hormone that actually makes your thyroid hormone sensitive, right? It increases the thyroid hormone that makes you gain weight, right? So that protects you from gaining weight. So even if you are heavy and struggling with weight issues, it will increase the thyroid hormone that makes you lose weight. So there is a direct correlation to the ability to lose weight. Now, MSH and leptin are really highly tied together, right? If leptin isn't good, MSH won't work. So that's where a lot of people get stuck. They'll say, I get a lot of sunlight, but then they got to go do what we did last podcast. They got to talk about what the leptin stuff is doing before you get here. It kills staph infections, candida, and E. coli.
Yeah.
I had a patient once and she described herself to me as the queen of food poisoning. And I was like, what the hell does that mean? And she was like, I get food poisoning constantly. And I was like, oh, and I'm looking at her, she's super fair. And I was like, yeah, your MSH levels are going to be unreadable. And they came out unreadable because she'll just constantly get E. coli, right? Because, unfortunately, as much as the food stuff can be clean, it's going to be problems. It keeps insulin sensitive. It keeps your glucose low. It helps collagen production. It protects your kidneys. If it's altered, it will reduce all your sex hormones. Mm-hmm. It will drive your melatonin levels down if it's altered. It will make your gut leak. So when people talk about gut leaking and leaky gut and taking all these supplements, if their MSH levels are not good, their gut is not going to bind together. And it's not going to stay together like that. That's what makes that so powerful. It suppresses endorphins, which is pain relief, right? Energy, that's what endorphins are. And the general thing about MSH is it will prolong any illness if it's low.
Yeah, so fibromyalgia is a big one with MSH, right?
Big. Fibro is big with MSH. Multiple sclerosis is big with MSH. They say statistically, 60% of people with MS have no readable levels of MSH. I will tell you that number is more like 100%, because every patient with MS that I've ever seen, when we check it, those levels are catastrophically low or not readable.
Right. Now, we talked about POMC as being very important in this, and POMC, the highest concentration of POMC is on the abdomen, right?
So you have a good amount of it on your abdomen. You have a good amount on your calf. The biggest amount you typically get through your eyes and then around your frontal lobes and things of that nature in the front of your brain. But yeah, you do have a tremendous amount on your abdomen. You do have a tremendous amount on your calves. So we want to make sure that when we're getting sunlight, as much as I know people don't love that idea, they want to try to get it on more body parts, right?
Yeah.
Because the type of sunlight.
A lot of people here in Louisiana don't want to have their stomach showing in the sun. So, they'll say, well, I'm getting my sun, and they're getting it on their shoulders and arms, but I need you to get it on your abdomen.
Yeah, especially if you have GI stuff.
Yes.
Like especially if you have the Crohn's, if you have the ulcerative colitis, if you have the IBSs, any of those guys, getting that type of light on your stomach is incredibly powerful, because there is a lot of POMC translation there that will turn to MSH. And then again, it will stimulate all this production stuff. Obviously, if MSH isn't good, melatonin isn't going to be good. We can't get the conversion to melatonin. And I mean, if you have GI autoimmunes and you want to make yourself kind of mad, but at the same time empower yourself greatly, go look up serotonin and its role in those diseases. Yeah. Because basically, if you get an excess amount of serotonin in your gut, you'll get the constipation side of IBS. If you don't have enough serotonin in your gut, you get the diarrhea side of it all. And it's that translation between those two sides. And it's exactly through this light spectrum thing that we're talking about today. And people get furious with me when they look at that and they're like, it says this causes it. Yes, it does. And people always get really mad when I'll tell them these things, and then they Google it, and then they find it says in the Google box at the top, which means Google is sure, right? It doesn't just give you links that you got to figure it out. It'll give you the Google box at the top that says it's sure about this. And it says, yeah, this is what causes it. And then they get crazed. And I'm like, I know it's frustrating, because someone should have told you that way before.
I've been to 7 doctors, and
way before you talked to me. Yeah. But at the end of the day, now this is how you fix it. This is how you get out of this.
Right.
But it is. I understand the upset around losing that time.
Yeah.
But that's why I said, measuring a marker like this is a number you just can't fake. And realistically, like I said, the lower that number goes, like if that number drops below 15, they will lose the ability to regeneratively sleep. Yeah. We talked about it last time, right? You'll sleep and you'll rest, but you don't heal.
Yeah.
Right? MSH is a marker that we can look at to tell you whether or not that's going to happen. It's probably the best one-off marker to diagnose or tell somebody about chronic fatigue. Mm-hmm. Right? So chronic fatigue is multifaceted. There's a lot of different parts to it. but looking at MSH, if I had to pick, like, put a gun to my head, said you can only pick one marker, looking at MSH, I could tell you where somebody's energy levels are, how their recovery levels are, what their healing rates are like. I had one gentleman, he actually broke my office record. You've heard the story, but he broke my office record for the most autoimmune diseases in one person. So we found 17 active antibodies in this guy.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
So, and when he first came to me, they were like, they thought he had Lou Gehrig's disease, right?
Yeah.
He had ALS. And we looked, I was like, it's not ALS. It just didn't look like ALS, didn't feel like ALS, didn't test like ALS. And I was like, are you sure you don't have autoimmune? And he's like, no, they tested me for that. They said I don't. Well, they tested him for 2 of the autoimmune diseases that he didn't have, but he had 17 other ones, like when we looked at all of them.
Yeah.
And his MSH was catastrophically low. It was unreadable. And we kept having these conversations. And one of his big things was, he had to retire early because he just mentally couldn't keep up. And he's a diligent patient, man. He's a great guy. And he's really diligent. He's always doing crossword puzzles, trying to keep his brain levels up and function. And sure enough, we get his MSH levels up, and he got to like 17, which is better, right? It's readable. Yeah. It's above that 15 marker. Like we want like 20, 21, 22 and above. When he was at 17, he's like, I'm like on fire here. He's like, I'm doing crossword puzzles like nothing. He's like, I went back and started doing puzzles that I couldn't do. Puzzles I got stuck on that I had to skip. I went back and did it purely from that one thing. So it just, just a demonstration of how powerful some ideas like that can be. But man, oh man, it is, like I said, it's why it's a lever, but it's an unheralded one because people are like, well, it's just about tanning. Yeah, but I mean, there's a reason for it.
Right. Now, what's the relationship? And I know there's a big one, but I'd like to hear your explanation of MSH involved in biotoxic illness. Now, for those of you that, when I say biotoxic illness, bio meaning it was once alive, toxic, now it's poisoning you, illness. These are old infections and molds and bacterias and viruses and funguses and candida and anything that's used to be alive that is still in your body creating debris or waste products. So that's what biotoxic illness means. And we find this on patients so often. And I know MSH plays a really big role in that, right, Doc?
Yeah. So biotoxic illness, the ones that most people typically know are mold exposures, right? Black mold in the home and things like that. Lyme disease is another big one, biotoxic illness. There are certain bacteria that can create it. Staph and strep can create biotoxic type illness stuff. There are certain algae that can do it as well, too. There were no viruses on record that really created biotoxic illnesses until COVID. COVID created biotoxic illness load. Yeah, what a shocking thing that was. Again, we'll probably have to be a podcast at some point about all that. But so it's creating this. And the pathway is that biotoxic illness creates, when it creates those toxins, it stimulates your fat cells, which will absorb and try to hold toxins from protecting it from the rest of the body. But it then causes your fat cells to stimulate a release of leptin and a stimulated release of inflammatory cytokines. Uh-huh. And when that happens and the leptin levels go high, if you get leptin resistant, your body will then be unable to produce MSH.
Okay.
So it's that pathway before. So leptin and MSH, like I said, it's the reason all the 5 levers are super important because they all play such a major role together. Mm-hmm. Because if we can't get past the leptin stuff, which was last podcast, then you're not going to get to, or I guess 2 podcasts ago, then you're not going to get to the MSH side. And then the killer part of it is too, remember, melatonin has to go before leptin. So melatonin levels have to be good before leptin can be good. Then leptin has to be good before MSH has to be good. And then what I tell you about MSH stimulates the production of more melatonin. So now it feeds itself.
Yeah.
Right. So then if MSH is good, now melatonin is good, then leptin stays good, then MSH stays good. And the kicker of all that is they all need that spectrums of light, which is the same type of light that vitamin D makes.
Yeah.
So that's why these guys are chosen very specifically because they're all dependent on each other. But this is really the cascade, like you said, the roadblocks of illness is where people will get stuck.
Yeah. Yeah. Dr. Rob looks at the patient and just goes, bright days, dark nights. Like that's like
it's true.
It's not, people want to overcomplicate this so much. And, just get out in the sun, early morning sun, midday sun, wear your blue blockers, have a dark room at night. Allow your body to do what it was designed to do. And we've gotten so far away from that. And, it's almost like patients go, come on, that's not all I have to do. It's not all you have to do.
It's not all,
but it's a big part of it, right?
It
makes a big
huge
difference.
Chunk. It is a huge chunk. And I will tell you, and you know this, but when we sit here, the people who follow that, when we do all of our protocols are designed to catch them up really fast. Right. They can get well a lot quicker than they would just naturally with all those things. But I recommend every single person does this, right? And when the people who really sink to it and really do it, they fly, right? They fly right through the program. They get well. There's like very little bumps. Like the people that I'm with, like 3 months into it, like you said, how many days does it take you to go out and get a sun coloring if you're in Vegas, right? When it's hot, right? Not a lot, right? In one day, you go on vacation, right? One day your skin changes colors. It's usually red because you're not built for that sun yet. But then I'm like, I'm trying to get a lot of sun, doc. And they're, again, like you said, real fair. And I'm like, you got to push these numbers up. If you push, and it's the one thing that we have a real hard time doing for them. I'm like, if you do this, I can make sure your body's completely primed to do this. But if you really don't want to see me ever again, if you want to get well, you really don't want to see me again, you sink to this and you just keep doing it, because the more you do it, the more stuff you get away with. And it's unfortunate that we have to, go over it so many times with people, because we, like you said, we just become so disconnected from it. You don't have to teach wild animals this. They just know how to do it. Yeah. But we're not wild anymore, right? We became domesticated, and now we have to relearn kind of how to reconnect and get to that primitive thing that just drives our whole system.
It's so true. Doc, talk a little bit about the relationship between MSH and ADH and frequent urination at night, and so how's that relationship work?
Okay, so ADH stands for anti-diuretic hormone, right? So anti-diuretic hormone, the easiest way I can give people an example is it's a hormone that your pituitary gland makes. But if you ever heard somebody saying, I have to take a water pill, water pills work on ADH hormones, right? So ADH keeps basically the water balance into your system normal. So people who have alterations in this, they'll start to get pooling in the ankles, they'll start to get the swelling. Well, the relationship between MSH, which is also another hormone that's stimulated by the pituitary gland, has a huge relationship on the control of ADH. So MSH helps you control the hormones that keeps the control of the fluid levels in your body. So a great hint that your MSH levels aren't good is if you're waking up through the night to go to the bathroom, it's because you're freeing up too much of that fluid and your body is constantly having to urinate it out. So it's a fascinating thing that when people don't typically link together, when you get a lot of that sunlight and you push those MSH levels up, it helps your ADH hormone balance the water concentrations in your body. And people come to me and say, I'm not getting up in the middle of the night to go to the bathroom anymore.
Yeah, I hear that all the time.
Yeah, like I'm not getting up. What happened here? Like, what is that? I'm like, look, you don't need a water pill, right? I always laugh because I have patients all the time like, well, I'm on a water pill. I'm like, well, did they check your ADH levels? No. Why would they check that? That's the hormone that's off that makes them give you a water pill. And then on top of that, MSH is the one that can control that, which is why you have all these other problems.
Right.
But they never look upstream. It's like, well, you're just retaining fluid. Just take this and, it'll help.
Yeah.
It is massively frustrating, to kind of watch them just skip these steps. But again, if there was a medication for these steps, they would jump all over it.
Right.
But there's not, so they just medicate the step that they can treat symptoms.
Yeah. Yeah. I have patients that tell me that very often. Like, I was getting up 3 times at night to pee. I'm down to 1. And then later on, it's like, I'm not even getting up at all. And that anti-diuretic hormone is starting to work because MSH is starting to work.
Yeah. My family's always made fun of me. They're like, how do you not get up to the middle of the night? I never did. Like I maybe once I got all this dialed in, it just doesn't even occur to me. Like I'd never wake up in the middle of the night to go to the bathroom. And I'm like, don't you have to go? And I'm like, no. My ADH is tight. My MSH is good. It's through the roof. We get a lot of sun out here, and I make sure I'm in it. I mean, the worst thing I do for my health is physically being in the clinic.
Yeah.
Right. Like trading my health for my time to come in here and help other people with their health. Right. Like but then on the days that I'm not in here, where I can on the days that I am, I'll go out after this and I'll be in the sun for a while. I'm up in the sun in the morning and stuff like that. I blue block and I do all those things. But, the days that I'm not here, I'm like, it's scheduled. I'm like, do not bother me. Like, this is my outside time. I have to basically pay penance for being in the clinic and trying to help everybody else.
Yeah, I do that too. And I think there's such a misconception, even with patients, when we tell them to get sun, that's why I liked your idea of switch to, I need you to change color. you know, you know, I'm not talking about like walking from your car to the building. You need to actually get enough sun on your skin that your color is changing. You're making melanin, you know, you're balancing MSH, you're starting to make vitamin D, all of those things. You know, you have to make enough effort to actually be in it enough for that to happen.
Yeah, you know, it's an important thing because again, we're kind of taught to stay away from the color change, right? You
Right.
know, don't get color in skin. You know, put suntan lotion on immediately. And again, you might have to build to that, right? I
Yeah.
think that's the important portion. You might have to build to that, but there is nothing on this earth that we can take or eat or do that replaces what the sun does for us.
Right. I actually used your line the other day. I stole your line on one of my patients. She was like, "Well, you know, I work during the day." And I said, "Okay, do they let people go outside for smoke breaks?" "Oh, yeah." I said, "Well, you get deserve to have a sun break. All right,
Yep.
take your 15-minute sun break and go out and sit in the sun." She was like, "Oh, I like that idea. I'm going to tell my boss."
Oh yeah, for sure. I'm like, I told a patient this earlier this week. I said, just tell them you're going out to smoke. They won't bother you
Yeah,
at all.
they'll let you do
You want to
that.
destroy your health? Good. Yeah, go do that. But they won't go to sun. Like, no, you can't do that. You have to stay here and work.
Right, right. Goodness. And so the cool thing about this MSH and melatonin and leptin and vitamin D, all these levers that we've been talking about, guys, this stuff can be tested. And we do test it. And we work on improving it. Because if we can improve these 5 levers, you will see your health just starting to build like a snowball, getting better and better and better. And these levers, no one else is looking at this, and it's certainly not this combination of these 5 very important things that we need to do to try to get you over this hump of just being stuck where you are with your health.
Yeah, you're not stuck. You just don't have leverage, and this is where the
Right.
leverage
I
lies.
like that. Yeah. Yeah. And, you know, give me a lever big enough and I can move the world, right?
Right.
These are the big levers. It doesn't matter so much if you're doing keto or carnivore. It doesn't matter so much what type of water you're drinking. These things are so much more important than that. And we've got to get the big stuff first. You know, Dr. Rob and I has been talking like building a house. This is the foundation. These 5 levers are the concrete and the plumbing and the wiring to your house. These are the things that are going to actually change your health permanently. And if you take care of them after we release you, you will keep getting better year after year.
Yep. If these are the markers, then I tell people, I'm like, this is what you focus on. You know, I'll help
Yep.
you do it, but if these are what you focus on, if these stay good, you stay good. It is literally that linear. And then all that effort that you put into all those other things, like watching every piece of food that you put in your mouth and all that other stuff, that all gets the volume turned down. It's not that it's not important, but you get away with so much more if all of this is good, right? That's,
Right.
in this ideology of bulletproof, that's what makes you bulletproof.
Exactly. Good. And that's what we want. We want bulletproof
Bulletproof.
patients. And so, man, this was a good one today, Doc. I learned some stuff. I really appreciate it. Listen, if you guys are interested in contacting us, look, this is what we do every day. I mean, we treat the most difficult, you know, stuck patients out there, and we develop a plan to get them better. So you guys can check us out on our website. We'd love if you do that. Doc, thanks, man. Another good one today.
Always fun.
All right. We'll see you next week, guys. Thanks for joining us.